art and science in the same head. That's me. I'm sharing it here with personal images and some help from friends. The nexus or connection is the mind. Like these stairways, there are multiple ways to view the world and to express that to others. Interestingly, art and science have both commonalities and differences. In common, they share the fact that you have to have vision and passion, and perspective and flexibility. And above all, they're forms of communication. In terms of differences, science is more about understanding, and art is more about awareness. In science, you theorize, test, and replicate, and it's impersonal and exact. In art, it's more the gestalt, the untestable, and it's about feelings, personal and undefinable. Albert Einstein said, "The whole of science is nothing more than a refinement of everyday thinking." And Bob Dylan said, "Some people feel the rain, others just get wet." Carl Sandburg wrote, "The fog comes on little cat feet." Looking at this foggy image, you can see that here lies the creativity in juxtaposing our awareness of the similar essence of fog and little cat feet and silence. Now, rock and ice and sky are well defined in this image, but there are more subtle realms of nature, like stress. Art and science can limit stress and also express its character. Take sensory deprivation, for example. It was first studied as a long-term negative, a type of torture to extract information. But in the first hour or so, it actually baselined everything, and it proved to be very relaxing. So, floating became a means for lowering stress and exploring the inner self. We investigated it. We collected psychophysiology data for 16 years and found it to be a good clinical tool for treating stress and pain. One important thing that we observed during these studies was that the deep relaxation of brief reduced sensory input reduced the levels of the stress hormone cortisol. And in this graph you can see that the lower line is in people who were floating, the upper one not. So we began to imagine quantifying stress in a context beyond a person, like affecting a whole ecosystem. For example, what if we could measure stress on a coral reef? What if we could measure cortisol in fish living on the reef as an indicator of that stress? You know, the fish becomes the canary in the mine. So, we set out to do this, and to do so, we collected poop samples from fish that were living on the reef, took those samples back to the laboratory and analyzed them for cortisol. And what we found was really interesting. In reef that was associated with undeveloped coastline, cortisol levels in these fish were normal. But in reef that was associated with highly developed coastline, cortisol levels were elevated. In other words, the fish were stressed. The importance of these studies is that they provide a means to quantify human impacts on coral reefs. A special enjoyment of this reef work has been passing the awareness on to young people. They love getting their eyes opened, and we've been fortunate to be able to provide field coral reef ecology courses to these students. Even places like this, with these wide open mountains, experience stress. How can you tell? When animal populations outstrip the food supply, it becomes deadly. In arid country with scarce food and water, this can happen without seeing crowds of animals. Our research subject in this case is the wild horse. Human expansion has reduced wild horse space in the western U.S., while high horse reproductive rates continue. So we developed a contraceptive for wild horses. And the approach is simple. We use a vaccine which targets the ovulated egg. Without the vaccine, which is the image on the left side, the sperm can attach to the egg easily and fertilize it. With the vaccine present, induced antibodies will coat the egg so the sperm cannot attach. And voila, contraception. This work and these animals have shown me clearly that we need a wiser and more mystical view of our world, celebrating the basics, where art and science blend, like on a cold night in an abandoned mountain cabin with a fire and a rusted bed spring. My friend here and me are a new kind of cowboy. It's about the animals as much as us. It's about us as part of the whole, not just observer or controller. It's also about understanding and awareness, understanding being the science part of it, and awareness being the art part of it. But looking at these things through whatever avenue that we find. It may be that this is what the donkey sees. In my case, the science has included exploration of both the inner self and the outside natural world, and the art has come from paying close attention to those surroundings.